The key success drivers, again, if you're going to sell information, are you have to understand that you are going to have multiple products. You're going to need lots of products compared to a lot of people in the space. You're going to have to be willing to constantly refresh your products to make them new, to make sure that they're dealing with kind of the latest and greatest. And you need to get to scale. Those are your drivers for success. And if you were thinking about what are your objectives as a business, what are you doing? Those are the things you have to be laser focused on. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 232 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's episode because we're going to today get really granular. We on these Tuesday episodes for the last month now, I guess, we've been talking about building a knowledge brand. And what does that mean in building a knowledge business? So, what is it actually going to take to build a business around your knowledge and expertise? And, up to this point, we've been talking kind of high level, talking about the economics and things like that. But today, we're going to shift a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the three types of knowledge businesses. Now, there might be a few others, but when you really look at how you can sell information, skill, and expertise, these tend to be the silos. Now, there's also you might do a little bit of multiple of these things, and there's some overlap, but I want you to really look at them. And what we're going to do is kind of going to break it down. And I'll just tell you, it's information sellers, service businesses, and then expert businesses. And so we're going to talk about each. And in each context, I'm going to talk about, as a general matter, what do they sell? Kind of, what is the level of expertise or skill involved? What's the competition look like? And those issues. But then with each, I'm going to talk about what are the key success drivers. In other words, if you want to build that kind of business, what is it that you need to have in place to be successful? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And again, at the end, I'll probably wrap up and, from my perspective, talk about what I think we should be striving to be long term. But that's my opinion. You don't have to follow my advice here, but I'm going to give you that at the end. So that's what we're talking about. It's going to be, a more tactical kind of specific episode than the last few. So I hope you enjoy it, and I would love to hear your feedback. Now, before we dive in, though, if you haven't yet, I would love for you to join Badass Online Marketing University, which is my free training program, which will help you build your knowledge business online. It's a true university with multiple courses, and it's ever growing. The idea is to give you courses that will help you to do kind of all the things of strategizing, planning, and figuring out the big picture of what you want to build, and then also even get granular. Now, it doesn't currently have, and likely will never have, kind of uber technical courses about particular platforms, because that's not the purpose. Like, if you want to learn the latest and greatest thing about Instagram, there will be places to find that other than that. But the concept of the BOMU is to help you figure out, should you be using Instagram at all? And what should you be focusing on? How should you think about content? Those types of higher level questions. And then the tactical stuff that we all have to do: build your list, email your list, create a product, sell your product. All that stuff we are talking about and is or will be included in courses inside of BOMU. You can sign up for free at bobbyklink.com/BOMU. That's BOMU. bobbyklink.com/bombu. Now, with that, let's dive in. And again, I mentioned there's 3 types of knowledge businesses: information sellers, service providers or service businesses, and then expert businesses. Let's start with information sellers. So people who sell information products. These types of businesses, by the name, they sell information products. It's literally a productized information. Very little actual implementation, very little support, very little time. It is the ultimate scalable product. So again, when you think about it, books are a classic example of this. But I have friends who sell in the online marketing space who sell resources to teachers. So it's resources that teachers can use in the classroom sold on Teachers Pay Teachers. So that is an example of an information business. I mean, they're selling these things that are, not a lot of support. It's scalable. It's packaged, templatized, all kind of set out, packaged information in one place. So what I'll tell you about these businesses, they require some skill. There's no doubt about that. There is skill and knowledge involved in doing this. One of the problems, however, is that knowledge and skill is copyable. If you think about it, as soon as you put your product out there, someone else can copy it. And I'm not talking about illegally copying it exactly, but I'm talking about they can take your idea and say, okay, well, I'm going to create my own version, and you can't stop them. Because copyright law doesn't stop someone from taking your product and saying, okay, I can create a competing one that solves all these problems. No, it stops them from literally copying and pasting. But the point is that with your product, once it's out there, other people can take that and copy it. And so that is part of the reality of what you're dealing with, okay? And so what that means is that you're going to have competition in these spaces, and the competition will continually drive down the costs of individual products. If you think about it, I mean, and I don't want to say the cost. It's the cost, it's the demand, it's everything, but it will drive down the amount of money you can make from an existing product. Now, we could talk about books here as an example. There are some books that continue to sell over time. But for the most part, a book has a very limited shelf life, right? Because the information is out there and then other people create, new versions, et cetera. And it just kind of, you don't sell a lot of it. Now, you can sell some, but not a ton. I mean, it was literally only a month or two ago that I finally turned off the ability for people to buy my patent litigation primer, which is a book that I wrote back in 2015, and it was being printed on demand through, I don't even think it's called CreateSpace anymore, but it's Amazon's direct printing. And so, people were still buying that, and I would get, $6, $10 a month, but you can see it wasn't something that was ever making me a lot of money after the big push. And that's what a lot of books will look like. I mean, the first year is where almost all the sales will come. And so, and again, I'm not talking about fiction books because that's different. That's a creative thing. I'm talking about a nonfiction type of information. And it's going to be the same thing. If you're selling information, eventually competition comes in, drives down the price, etc. So now let's talk about if you want to build a business selling information, what are the key success drivers to kind of make that successful? And the way I look at it, there's a few things to think about. Number one, the chances are that you're going to have to sell multiple products. And I'm not talking about one or two. The people who, there are large groups of people who are successful at doing this, where this is really the only thing they sell. They have lots. And I'll use those teacherpreneurs as examples. I have a friend who has 600 or 700 resources that she sells. So again, that's 600 or 700 different products. And actually, there's probably more products because she probably has packs and bundles and all that. But different resources, there's at least 600. Of my templates, you could think of my templates as an information product. Now, there's an argument that they're a bit more than that, but if we just called them information products, I think right now we have 26 or 27 of them. I don't remember exactly, and they're bundled in different ways. So we have a lot of products. We don't have one product. And that will be part of the driver of success for those kinds of product businesses, in my view. If you're selling information products, you need more than one. And although I don't think of Michael Hyatt as an information product business because he has coaching and all those things, if you think about his books, he has a new book every year. I mean, every year there's a new book. So he has multiple books out there on multiple things, etc. So that's kind of an important concept to think about. Now, the next piece that relates to that is you're going to be constantly refreshing. And that is the reality. We talked about this last week in last week's episode, that it's not you create something and you forget it and never have to update it. The reality is you're going to have to update courses, et cetera. Now, luckily for me with legal templates, the law doesn't change that often with respect to the stuff that I'm helping people with. So we don't have to do a ton of updates. But if you have an information product about something that changes, you're going to have to update it and you're going to have to refresh it and you're going to have to make it new to keep up with what's happening, but also because the way it's delivered will change. And so again, although we didn't do an update to the content necessarily, we did do an update to my legal templates recently by adding our generators. And, you know, in the next year, I suspect, I don't know for sure, we will probably tweak and update the interface of the generator. So again, it is something that we are iterating and improving, etc., in addition to adding new products. So that's going to be part of your success drivers there as well. So again, if you want to sell information, you need to be thinking you're constantly innovating, you're constantly coming out with additional products, and you're refreshing your old products and existing products. And then the other big thing is that my view is that the success drivers for these business is to get to scale. Now, for a lot of people, again, I've projected that I don't believe the life of $2,000 courses is going to be around very long in it packaged information courses. But separate from that, what I'll tell you is that if you want to sell at premium price of whatever premium price is, what you have to do is get to scale and become the person for a particular product or a particular idea or a particular thing. So again, you have to become one of the 2 to 3 people who's known for teaching other people Instagram, teaching other people Facebook, etc. if you're selling that information. Those are the people who are succeeding. When you look at the people who are, have these successful businesses selling largely information products, they tend to be those people. So there's that. Either you go that route and become one of the 2 or 3 top well-known people, so people will buy because of your name, or it's you sell it very cheap. And again, I'll use those, my friends who sell to teachers, they're often selling their resources at $4 and $5. So they're, not selling them for expensive, but you can see if you're selling resources for $4 and $5, you've got to sell a lot of them. So you have to get to scale, not because you're becoming the person, but because you have to sell a lot of them to make those things worthwhile. And so that is kind of the thing. Ultimately, the success drivers, you have to have a plan to get to scale and get to scale relatively quickly for an information product to work. Because you got to sell a lot of them, or you've got to get to the point that you have such positioning that you can sell it at a premium. Either way, it requires scale. And so the key success drivers, again, if you're going to sell information, are you have to understand that you are going to have multiple products, and you're going to need lots of products compared to a lot of people in the space. You're going to have to be willing to constantly refresh your products to make them new, to make sure that they're dealing with kind of the latest and greatest, and you need to get to scale. Those are your drivers for success. And if you were thinking about what are your objectives as a business, what are you doing? Those are the things you have to be laser focused on. Is how do you create, how do you create the next product? How do you build time in to update this product while also marketing and communicating to get to scale so you can sell a ton of these things? And again, some of that might be with pricing, with doing things like penetration pricing, which is a pricing theory where you price cheaply so you get wide kind of, people buy your stuff. And so you have a lot of people who've taken it, and then you can increase your price after you've kind of established your positioning in the market. But the concept is you've got to think it through and figure out what is your plan to get to scale. So that's information businesses, like our information product businesses. Now let's talk about service businesses. Now, service businesses, by the name, it's one-on-one work is their primary offer. They're selling their services, trading hours for dollars, as we say. This type of business requires skill. It's going to require some kind of skill, but what tends to distinguish this type of business from an expert business is a service business. Often the underlying subject matter skill is not something that is closely held. There's a lot of people who have this skill set. Again, we could think of virtual assistants as a service business. We could think of designers as a service business. There's lots of different people here. We can think of website builders. All of those folks, they have skill sets. They have skill sets that I don't have. They have skill sets that you don't have, unless you happen to be one of those people. But there's a lot of people who have it. And so it's not like it's a level of expertise that is closely guarded and only, a very small handful of people have. Okay. And so what that will tend to mean is that there will be a lot of competition, and that the competition will often drive prices down. You won't be able to charge a ton of money because someone else will come in and do a job that is equally as good for that purpose, for that person, for a cheaper price. And again, part of this is understanding, does the work require the extra level of expertise? And what I mean by require is at some level, I don't need someone who can write the perfect code if I'm building a website using a theme. For most online marketers, for most people in our space, you don't need someone to custom code a website for you. And so as a result, the people who can build websites that are not custom coded, there's a lot of them, but you just don't need to pay someone. Now, in our case, we paid people to custom code our website because we wanted extra functionality. We wanted those things, but that's because we are further along in our journey. And so in some sense, I needed a more expertise-driven web developer than most people do. So just to give you a sense, without boring you, the web developers will understand this. A lot of our website is built based upon, writing coding related to PHP rather than kind of using just the Elementor builder, although we do have the Elementor builder built into our website. So, there's a lot of custom stuff that's been built in and that is done with our site. So again, the point here is that service businesses, as compared to expertise businesses, are often, they're providing the stuff that, is a skill set that's available, but not something, you have to have skills, but it's not something that has to be the very top most skilled people. Again, we could use examples of this. I don't care that someone who comes over to do basic plumbing work at my house, I need them to be able to be proficient at that. I don't need them to have studied plumbing for, 15 years. I don't know if it's possible to do such a thing, but you get the point. I don't need a master craftsman for most things and most services. And so that's the point here. And if you're in that place, the prices will be driven down because there is a lot of competition. So if this is the kind of business you're building, what are the key success drivers? And you have to have the proficiency. So you have to be able to have the right skill set. But ultimately, for these types of businesses, the success doesn't come from the expertise in the area. It comes from marketing and business building expertise. In other words, the way you get kind of really true success with these types of business is that you are really good at messaging, you're really good at marketing. And so because of that, you're able to get your name out there so people will see you and hire you and think of you as the person for that solution. But it's also about being efficient and knowing how to build efficiency and efficient systems so that your costs are lower than your competitors. And your costs are lower because, for example, you have processes in place, you have figured out the ways to do things more quickly, and so you spend less time, and time is in fact money in the service business. And so again, you've got expertise in marketing and messaging, but you've also got expertise in systems, in building efficient systems, et cetera. So you really can kind of, take on more clients without having to work more, but that means you're able to make more money. And then also it's team building. And so that is a skill set unto itself. And that ties in with obviously the efficiency in systems. You have to be able to create systems so that your team can work efficiently, but you also have to be a good leader and be willing to invest in learning leadership and understanding those things. So, if your goal is to build a service business that's going to support you over the long term, ultimately what you have to be thinking is you're going to not be doing the actual work very much. You're not going to be providing the service. Now, up front you are, but the ultimate path to success is that you're not the one doing the work. You're not doing the doing. You're building a team. You're building an agency of people who are doing the doing. That is ultimately going to be your driver of success in this. I mean, if you think about successful local businesses like plumbers, I mean, it's rarely someone where like the actual like person who founded the business is still doing the plumbing work. No. At this point, they have a team of plumbers that they've hired. They have systems. They have all of those things. They're marketing companies effectively who get business, and then they have the people who do the work. And so you have to be thinking from that same model to build a successful kind of business. And so that's kind of the big stuff. And then the last piece I'll say, when you're a service, like when you provide services to people, the level of service, the experience that you're able to provide to people matters. And this has a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of things you need to think about in providing services. My business, we have been very let down with multiple agencies we've hired over the last year. And it's often been the case of overpromise and underdeliver. And that's going to have a bad impact. And so you need to be careful and understand the experience, the expectations you're setting up, and make sure that people finish the relationship in love with the service they got. And when you do that, you're going to get repeat customers, you're going to get brand advocates, et cetera. So that's another part of your success that is incredibly important if you're building a service industry or service business, because ultimately, if you don't provide a good experience, you're going to turn off your potential customers and your potential repeat customers, et cetera. So you have to make sure that that is up to par. So again, when you heard me talk about that note, I didn't talk about your product all that much. I didn't talk about your offer all that much. I didn't talk about expertise all that much. The key drivers to success for a service business ultimately have to do with mastering business building. It has to do with mastering marketing, messaging, creating efficient systems, finding ways to operate your business efficiently, building a team, and creating a wonderful service experience for your customers. That ultimately is how you succeed in building a service industry. If you don't, what will happen is you will constantly be chasing new customers, and that will exhaust you. Now, if you build a service business this way, all of a sudden you're not going to worry about this whole you don't want to be trading time for money, because you're not trading your time for money. You have other people working, doing the doing, and you are building the business, and you're working on your business. You're the entrepreneur, you're the manager, not the technician. And so as a result, you're able to make a good living that you enjoy. But the point that I'm getting across here is that if you want to go down this route, you need to make darn sure that you have a passion for the business building side, not for just doing the work. Because if your passion is for doing the work, you're probably not going to like this business over the long term. And so you're going to kind of be upset because suddenly, you're going to feel this pressure and it's not going to be fun. So that's service businesses. Now that takes us to the final business, which is expert businesses. And by the way, if you're someone who loves doing the work, loves geeking out about this stuff, this might be something you can do. Because an expert business can sell a variety of different products. The offers can be all over the place. Part of what you could do is services, but at an ultra premium price where you are the premium person. And so, it's not as hard. I mean, you can think about like copywriters, for example. Some of the best copywriters in the world can make 7 figures basically as a solopreneur with a virtual assistant helping them manage their team because they are that in demand, because they are that skilled, because they've put in the time to become so good at what they do that people will pay them that ultra premium price. So again, this is where I said that the lines aren't always the same, but if you really love doing the doing and you don't want to be the person building a big team, building an agency, you need to be thinking you have to become the expert model, not the service, which means you have to be doing the ultra premium work. You have to be building your skill set, building your expertise so that you can get to that level. Now, another thing, though, to be clear, expert businesses can be in the information space, but often they're at the leading edge. And so because they're at the leading edge, there isn't someone else selling the same information as them. They're the ones who are coming up with new, true thought leadership. Although experts oftentimes aren't selling that information, but they could. But the most common way that experts apply their skill, other than doing premium like one-on-one service, is some kind of done with you or scaled implementation program. And done with you would mean I'm not the one executing, because you wouldn't want to pay me to execute doing all of the little tactical things in your business, but it might be worth you paying a premium price to come in and work with me as I'm the strategist creating the strategy, the high level plan, which you can then go execute, right? So that's kind of a done with you where basically you're renting my brain. You're using my brain to do that in a consulting thing. So this is kind of in a sense, when you look outside of our space, management consultants did this forever. Management consultants, they would come in, they would kind of do their work, and then they would provide findings and tell the company, this is what you need to be doing. Now, they would have teams that could do the follow-on work, but largely they got paid the big bucks for this strategy, finding the problems, creating the plan, etc. So that's one model. Now, the other model, and what's kind of more common in our space, is the group coaching, group implementation model. It's figuring out a way to scale an implementation program so you're able to provide your expertise in a scaled way. And there are limits to how much you can scale this. I mean, you cannot scale it, and have 5,000 people going through a program all at once. I mean, realistically, that just doesn't work. But you can find ways to do masterminds, to do high-level coaching where you can have a very good business model. And eventually you can build a team if you want to kind of fill this out. And you maybe have some other coaches helping with small things. So you come in and have other people trained in your method who help, etc. But that's kind of the model here for an expertise built our business. Now, an expert business requires a high level of skill, knowledge, and devotion to the craft. And that could simply mean that if you're willing to do certain work and study in a place where other people aren't, you can do that. But the people who tend to do this are people who want to geek out on the subject matter. Again, I would, although you shouldn't call yourself an expert, I would say I'm building an expert business because I geek out on reading marketing textbooks. I geek out on reading stuff that not like easy to read books, but like really kind of in the weeds things to kind of have a devotion to build the craft, build my skill set as a marketer, and then think through how do we take those concepts and bring them to the online world. And I'm doing that kind of thought leadership work on an ongoing basis. it's not something that I'm done. It's not something that I'm like, okay, I created it once and I'm done. No. This is an ongoing thing. So my treadmill, if you will, and this is going to be true if you're an expert business, is that you're kind of constantly thinking, reading, trying to understand, go deeper, learn this stuff more so that you are one of the experts on a subject or the experts on a particular way of applying something. And so this is what being an expert means. One of the things that this does is that building that level of expertise creates a barrier to entry because very few people are going to be willing to do it. Now, again, I don't remember his last episode or the episode before. I think it was the episode before, or 2 weeks ago. We talked about barriers to entry and how in the information business, there aren't any, but in the expert business, there are. Now, it's not about a certification necessarily, because yes, certifications can be important, but I'm simply talking about being willing to put in the work. Very few people are willing to do the work that I will do to understand marketing, to read marketing textbooks, to think through all this stuff, to constantly be like, have my brain on putting this stuff together. And because of that, my willingness to put in that work creates a barrier to entry. Now, I'm not saying that makes me better than anyone else. It doesn't. It just makes me different, but it creates something that prevents other people from coming in. And that's the way you can kind of think about, part of what an expert business and why an expert business can be different. So the key success drivers for an expert business, number one is subject matter expertise. You have to be someone who has a level of expertise in your subject matter that is among the top in a group. And it's not surface level. As you go deep, you understand the why, you understand the nuances, you get it. Like if you wanted to be like a Facebook ads expert, again, I don't know that would be a place you could do this, but if so, it would be like by literally reading every single thing that ever, that anyone from Facebook ever says about ads, reading about all these other things, trying things out, see what's working, experimenting, playing around, like all of that stuff. So that's kind of one thing, is like subject matter expertise. But then another key success driver here is that you have to show that expertise, which means you have to be creating thought leadership content consistently. And what that means to me is you're creating content on a regular basis that is not the same or similar to what other people are talking about. Now, you do some how-to content, you do some stuff that's not thought leadership, but you have to be willing to create the thought leadership, to create new ways to think about things, new ways to talk about things. And you have to do that consistently so that people will see you as the expert. So, and it means creating a lot of content too. I mean, it's you have to be willing to put that out there on a regular basis. And again, content here, to be clear, I mean, some of it is like, could be written content, podcasts, etc. Some of it could be being a guest on places, speaking on things, but just putting that stuff out there so people in your industry see you as the thought leader. That's a big part of building an expert business. And so again, one thing I want to talk about here, when you're hearing this, you may be saying, I don't want to build that kind of business. And that's okay. Because building an expert business is not for everyone. It requires a devotion to a craft, a willingness to become an expert at a level that very few people will, on the subject matter itself, and also a willingness to put yourself out there. And so if either one of those doesn't sound like something you want to do, you should not be building a thought leadership business or an expert business. And then the last big key success driver here is that you get success for people, whether it's like in one-on-one work, if you're doing that, or it's group implementation work, or your if you sell information products somehow, or if you do kind of the done with you, no matter what it is, you have to build a track record of success, because ultimately people are only going to be willing to see you as an expert if you're able to help people break through problems, get success, and kind of make the progress. And so that's it. Now, one thing I want you to note here, for an expert business, the success drivers don't have nearly as much to do with any of the business expertise or marketing expertise or any of that stuff. Now, in my case, it kind of does, because obviously that's my thought leadership. But the point is, I mean, you're going to have to build a team and all those things, but those don't need to be among your superpowers. In an expert business, your expertise that the expertise that matters more is the expertise about your subject matter and less about the working on your business. And so if you're building an expert business, this is an important concept. You will always be highly involved in the content creation. And not just the actual like being in front of the camera, but in the one, you'll be the person coming up with the ideas. And that is kind of something that you have to look and say, is that your wheelhouse? If you're not someone who is good at coming up with ideas and doing that and doing thought leadership, this is probably not going to be the thing. But I'm simply saying that this is why I'm building a business in this third model. I will never be someone who's able to step out and not be very actively involved in the content part of my business. For an expert business, the visionary, the head of the business, will have to be very actively involved in the content part of your business, probably forever. Now, this is an important contrast. The service business, candidly, the visionary is more likely to have an active role in things like the sales, the growth part of the business, and the operations part of the business, because that needs to be their area of expertise. The content anyone could create, because it's not really about you as much. Whereas in the expert business, you really are the content workhorse. And so that's an important distinction for you to understand. So that's an expert business. Now, again, I tend to think that, long-term sustainability comes from one of these two business models. Either you go the service business route and you devote yourself to being a master of building kind of the business, the agency, the efficiency, the team, the leadership, all that stuff, or the expert business. I think the building an information business, I mean, you can do it, but I think it's a very hard path to go. I think a lot of people are promised the notion that they can sell information products and they love it because it sounds scalable. It sounds, I can have my 4-hour work week. I can have freedom. I can be on the beach making money. And that's all a bunch of BS. And very few people are making money consistently doing that. And so my belief is that you need to make a choice that either you're going to build a service business where your real, what you bring to the table is your ability to kind of build the team, the efficiency, master the marketing, master all of that stuff, and really kind of do that piece, or go the expert business route, where you are building a business based upon you being a true subject matter expert who's willing to put in the time and continually grow in that space. Those are the two routes that kind of work over time and that have worked over time and that can lead to, long-term success. And so I think you need to pick one of those. And part of picking one of those, which should you go with, is going to be about what is your kind of personality mix like. Knowing those things will help. Like, I am not an execution person. I am someone who is fantastic at ideas, at thoughts, at connections. So the expert business makes way more sense for me than building a service business based upon systems. Ironically, my integrator, Katie, she's great at that. If she had continued her business, she probably would have gone down that route of creating a business along that route, would have been what would have worked for her. So it's really about personality and understanding what your superpower is so you can figure out which route makes most sense for you. Now, the good news is both of them, you can start the same by, getting a skill set in a craft, working with people, maybe kind of trying to do combinations of things and see what works and then go from there. But ultimately, you'll probably pick one of those two routes and kind of go down it. So that's it for today's episode. Now you have a sense of the three types of information businesses. Next week, we're going to talk about one of the most important concepts, which is the importance of repeat customers and why you need to be thinking about that from the outset when you're building a knowledge brand. It's important in any kind of brand, but we're going to talk about it because it's important, because I think it's contrary to a lot of what you're hearing in our space. So that's what we got on tap for next week. I'll see you then. Until then, make sure you check out this Friday's episode. Again, we continue to, have interviews with folks talking about, their areas of expertise, but also talking about the struggle. And, I think that's an important thing. I want people to understand that building these businesses is hard. It is not easy. So if you're struggling, it's not your fault. It doesn't mean you're not cut out for this. We all struggle. And so I hope you've been enjoying those, but, I'm going to keep producing them because I think it's an important message to get out there. So that's it. I'll see you next time. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.